Hello and welcome to the second of three S3 BGE literacy lessons where we're going to focus on grammar, RUI and text annotation activities. First though is a very quick starter. If you go into your team's assignment, you should find a link to a Desmos card sorting activity. If it's not in the assignment, it will just be in your main class team. I want you to complete that. It shouldn't take you long at all, and the answer key will change to a yes once you've correctly matched the technique to the example. If you're having trouble at all, please tag your teacher or speak to the host teacher if you're on the live call. Okay, let's go on to our grammar activity today, and we are looking at practice with an S versus practice with a C. Now it's a wee bit more confusing because the American version is just a C. So quite often you will see practice used incorrectly for the UK because you'll be reading a lot of text that is using American English. So just to make life a wee bit more interesting for you. But in the UK, practice with an S would be a verb and practice with a C would be a noun. So let's just have a quick refresher. A verb is an action or a state, so it's something that you do. And a noun is the name of a thing. So it could be something you are or something you have. So practice is the verb, you practice something. Practice with a C is a noun. You can have a practice or complete a practice. Let's look at some examples. A common practice, you're using a practice, is to tip the waiter at the end of a meal. I practice the piano every day. Every day I have piano practice. So that's suddenly a thing, so you would use a C. It is important for teachers to share best practice. So again, it's a thing that they are sharing. I have been practicing my baking skills, so they're doing that. Where is the local medical practice? Again, it's a thing again, so it's a C. This can be tricky, and there are times when you can start to get in a bit of a tiz over whether something's a noun or a verb, but try and not overthink it, and just remember if you're doing the practice itself, although I use that as a noun, if you were practicing, it would be an S, whereas if it's something that you have or something you can own or influence, then it would be a C, or attend or go to. There is a practice versus practice activity in your worksheet, so please pause the video just now and do that activity. Let's move on then to reading for understanding, analysis and evaluation. Just as a quick refresher again, I know you did the refresher activity at the beginning, but just to remind you, simile is when you compare one thing to something else, making the comparison clear by using like or as. Personification is when you give an inanimate object human qualities. And metaphor is when you compare one thing to something else by saying it is the other thing. And remember that when you analyse an image, you use just as, so it is. Just as, literal root, so it is, writer's meaning. But today we're moving on to analysing sound effects and identifying the effect and then explaining why it was used. Now the effect will depend on the context, and we're in S3, we're just going to focus on it lightly, but as you get older we'll look back at this again and again. So the main sound effects we are going to focus on today are alliteration, which is usually used to draw your attention to an idea or used to help you remember a key idea. Alliteration is often used in advertising. Sibilants, usually used to either mimic whispering, so it could be to create an intimate feel, or hissing to create the idea that the writer's really angry. It could also draw your attention to an idea because it could be used the same way as alliteration, because it is still a type of alliteration. Onomatopoeia, used to mimic a particular sound or grab the reader's attention to a particular point or event. Just in case you've forgotten, alliteration is the repetition of a particular letter sound. Sibilants is the repetition of an S sound, but remember a soft C could be an S sound. Onomatopoeia is a word that sounds like the sound it is describing, like bang. Okay? So let's look at some examples. The waves crashed on the beach. You could analyse that by saying that the writer has used onomatopoeia to allow the reader to hear what the writer could hear, making the scene more vivid. The deceit was astounding. I despise you, she hissed. The sibilance has been used to create a hissing sound, emphasising just how angry the character is. And they've also used onomatopoeia in the word hissed. And again, that almost brings you right there, doesn't it? It makes the scene more vivid and it makes you really hear that anger, that sibilance coming through. So what I want you to do now is pause the video and complete the activity or all the activities relating to sound effects. Remember, if you're stuck, your teacher will be on the live call or a teacher will be on the live call, or if you'd rather speak to your own teacher, you could tag your own teacher in Teams. The other thing that you could do, which I haven't mentioned in the previous video, is email them, and remember it's their Glow name at glow.sch.uk. Especially if you've got a question or query that you don't want the rest of the class to see, that's how you could contact them. Moving on then to annotating a text, and this time we are going to look at the poem In the Snack Bar by Edwin Morgan. Remember that annotation is a really important skill because it helps you engage with the text in a lot more detail than just reading it once. Remember, when you annotate the text in Word, you could use the drawing tools, or if you'd rather, you could insert text boxes or anything that you find. The other thing you could do, which again I didn't mention last week, is if you were annotating the text on a bit of paper, if you were able to print this off, then you could upload a picture of it onto the Word document and just insert it in. So any format, as long as I'm able to see that you were annotating, I don't mind which. So pause the video and complete the annotation activity just now. Let's look at the final and extension activities. So the final task then, you look at the text, the poem you've just annotated. You're going to pick out 2 examples of sound effects, try and pick out different ones. Identify the technique and explain the effect. And remember, please speak to either your class teacher or the call host teacher if you need any help. The extension then, you can just add to your Word document right at the bottom. You're going to reread the poem and make notes. You could also be annotating for the imagery as well as the sound effects so that you're still practicing that skill, practicing with an S. And you're going to write a short paragraph to explain what the poem is about. It's one of my favourites, by the way. Again, if you're not sure what the poem is about and you want to just check something, please contact one of the teachers in the English department. We will help you. Right, so some final thoughts then, just to recap what we've done today. We have looked at, we've gone over imagery again, and please make sure you do that quick Desmos activity. It's just a good refresher to have. We've looked at the different ways in which you would spell practice and when you would use those spellings. And then we've looked at sound effects today, and in particular, alliteration, sibilance, and onomatopoeia. We've continued our annotation skills as well, and again, I can't stress this enough, the more practice you have of annotation, the quicker you're going to get at it. Next lesson, we are going to look at some sentence structure techniques. Bye for now.